Hello? Are we recording?
David, did you start the recording?
Recording in progress.
Call the meeting to order. Thank you everybody for being here. We have a couple guests today. Mr. Dennis Thatcher, he's been here before. We appreciate him being here. And then of course, our Secretary of Labor and Licensing, Secretary Sept. So, talking to us here in a minute. Susie, would you call roll?
Michael Griffin, Brian Hester,
Here.
Sarah Hawkins, here, Julie Matthews, here, Scott McKinnon,
Here.
Wally Loveless,
Here.
Matthew Mueller,
Here.
Daniel Story,
Here.
Sarah Stevens, here. Mr. Chairman, we do.
Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda. Michael is not here, so we need to vote on whether or not that's an excused absence or not.
He told me that he was gonna have to attend by Zoom, so I know that he had something going on, I just don't know what it was. It doesn't look like it.
Well, we can always change it. Don't have to say.
Could we end up say unexcused pending,
Pending getting on Zoom.
right, pending Zoom? I'll second.
Favor? We'll move. Now we'll move on to the meeting agenda. Motion to accept the meeting agenda or not? All in favor? Now we will hear from Mr. Sept.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you. Good to see you all. It's my first attendance at the new meeting, at the new configuration of the board, and this is not a coming to Jesus meeting. You haven't seen me, so the secretary showing up doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. It means that everything is right. I spent a few minutes and I saw some of you in the break room and witnessed how you began your meeting. There's clearly a deal here going on. You are the stars of my department. This board is functioning in a way that I think the governor certainly is going to be proud of. I'm proud. But more importantly, I think this board is functioning in a way that the people of the state of Arkansas, we're working together. You disagree, clearly, I know. I have to be here to know what's going on. Trust me, I try to stay on top of things. You're not being disagreeable. There's a difference, folks. There's a huge difference. I just want to thank you for your service. Not getting paid for this, you leave your normal course of employee and come here and dedicate your time, efforts, your expertise. Try to do what? Try to protect the people of the state of Arkansas. No compensation, other than travel. You don't get paid for this. And so when you get grief, and there's always going to be grief in the boards, you're serving on any board of the state government, there's going to be grief. You have pushed this amalgamation of three different dispersed entities forward. We pushed it forward positively. Let me just go through a couple of things that I have here that you should be aware of. First of all, Diana is a star for me. Just trying to figure out a way to keep. I'm not going to let that happen. We have seen an increase in combinations with the since we had this combination by 30. So my staff has had to deal with a lot, mainly Diane. I come up here on Saturdays occasionally, Sundays occasionally, not often, but every so often because I don't have regular hours. There is one thing that I notice. It seems like every time I come up here, she's in her office. You cannot get a better director. Leave Diane. Disagree with her? Don't be disagree. Because she has the same opinion. We had 1,500 appraisers, 93 abstractors, 364 home inspectors. Home inspectors are going down, have been going down over the last 5 years. Noticing that, that's a trend that the board's going to have to look at. Why is that happening? I think we kind of know something that you need to know that I'm seeing and I'm trying to look at. We've only had 2 in 24 new licenses in abstractors. That's not good. 24. We're down 120 new licenses from 2023 in appraisers. 2025 has shown some growth. Appraisers. Some significant growth. Diana's feeling that because she's having to do those renewals, but that's a good thing. For June of 2025, we've seen 40 licenses. That's above where we were last year. So that's showing some growth. It's showing some movement there. Excuse me, dealing with allergies. Trish had me out in the yard yesterday cutting bushes and grass and everything else. Through June, home inspectors, we had 25 new licenses. We're not going to make a 40 total. You need to recognize that we're seeing a significant decline in that area. Something that the board's going to have to take under consideration. We're going to have to look at that, be mindful of that. Our height in that division was in 2021 when we had it. So, new licenses. But we've seen a steady decline since then. Well, some things I want you to think about. I want you to think about these three things. First of all, I think we need to start to think global. We got to think about how in the world are we going to promote these professions, especially those professions that see significant declines. It's going to take money. It's going to take more education. It's going to take outreach into high schools, colleges. Are we going to have Paul Jacob Leva in here? We're going to try to get education, or what are we going to do? Because we still need home inspectors. We still need appraisers. We still need abstractors. Now, I know a lot of things are going online. Absolutely. But we still have a broadband connection problem in Arkansas. That was my whole thing when I was, chairman of the Public Service Commission. We still have some issues in Arkansas where people don't have access to broadband in Arkansas. And we've made significant strides with regard to broadband deployment in Arkansas, but we're still not there yet. We've got to realize we're not there yet. Okay? So to the extent that that impacts us, we're not. For abstractors, appraisers, and home inspectors, we've got to put people out there and ensure that their health insurance, the safety of our citizens. Does that make sense? Living on it. We've got to get proactive. Got to start doing something.
One time, while you're talking, especially on the home inspector, reach out to each colleges. Get a 2-year degree to be a welder tomorrow. At least each college start teaching home inspector education. Next year, 2 years, graduate, that's all.
You looking at my notes? It's exactly where I'm coming from. I talked to Jacob Oliva, Secretary Oliva, the other day about the possibility of putting some of our training programs into our 2-year college. And initiating, they can get out of there, they can get in, they can get trained, they can come out, they can be available for our profession. Exactly. Not only am I going to wrestle for your seat, but you got that's exactly where we're going. And I'm going to be getting with Diana and setting up a meeting with Diana and Jacob Oliva to just explore that possibility. Of course, you'll need to take it back to the board. You'll need to get your approval, your thorough vetting, because you are the expertise in that area. But you need to know that that's what I'm doing. Because we need to think outside of the box. If the people aren't coming to us, then we need to find ways to get them in order to boost these numbers, because they're going down precipitously. We get to a point where it's a point of almost no return. Getting close to that. 3 to 4 years will be at that point. We don't want to get there. We want to utilize our 2-year colleges. We have 32 of them strategically located throughout the state, uniquely qualified to do the exact thing that we do, to service every area of the state. So let's utilize that to the extent possible. We need to have instructors to come in, adjunct instructors to come in. We have people that could do that on an adjunct basis to go into our 2-year colleges. We have enough home inspectors that can go in and do that on an adjunct basis. Right? Same thing with appraisers, same thing across the board. Right? Let's start utilizing this thing. I think too long we've waited for people to come to us. We don't need to do that. We've got a brain drain, we've got a revenue drain. Special revenue agency department. The only way we survive is that we have to bring in money. Unlike most state departments, we are special revenue. We are most akin to the private sector than any other entity in state government. Okay? We eat what we catch. What we can. We got to bring people into us, grow our professions, grow these 3 professions. We need to do that. First of all. Secondly, we need to enhance the confidence that people have. We've done some things and we've made some mistakes in the past. Always in good spirit, but we made some mistakes in the past. And so we have a confidence issue with the public with regard to some of our professions. We can go a long way in rehabilitating their reputation by getting ourselves out there in these 2-year institutions and holding job fairs. Go a long way toward rehabilitating that. We have to do that because confidence degree that the public has confidence in our occupations, we'll see growth because people will want to be a part of it. So rehabilitation has to be a focus of the school, recognizing that there's some issues. We're not perfect, folks. We're not perfect. We have some issues that we need to deal with, need to correct, need to rehabilitate. Let's address it. Straight up. Honestly, openly, not disagreeably, but openly and honestly, and address it. We do that with the momentum that we've already got going on, that you've already set the stage where you're going right now. You do that, you're going to see exponential growth. Second, we got to create incentives for the people. Come on. Our workforce services department, those of you who know me, know that I used to be in another life as director of workforce services. I know a little bit about workforce services. If it's going to require incentives for us to bring people in, we can do that. We need to let the people know that there are incentives. Right? What am I talking about? What are you talking about? I'm talking about Pell Grants. If we get into the two-year colleges and we get them enrolled, and we get a curriculum that's certified in the two-year colleges, those individuals that want to be a part of our programs can get Pell Grants. They can go to school for free. Okay? Those are incentives. But those are incentives we're going to know about because we're sitting around here in the morning. African County. Does the average Arkansan know that they can go to school for free and become an appraiser, an abstractor, a home inspector? Do they know that? No, they don't. We're going to let them know, right? We're going to let them know there's an opportunity. Secondly, we need to be able to place these people once they get out of those two-year colleges. They need to have a job. So the companies, you guys are affiliated, you ladies are affiliated, need to be prepared and offer these people opportunities of employment. That closes the loop. So we can sit in these offices and these board meetings. We can talk about platitudes and we can talk about pie in the sky. But today, opportunities. Just outline 3 pages. It's for you guys to think about it, but I have told that you're going to think about these things, and now it's going to become part of your agenda. It's going to be a part of who you are. Based on what you've been doing so far, I don't see any way successful.
I agree with everything you said. Challenge we face on the commercial side. We can have community colleges do the required education. But I don't know about residential, because I'm certified general. In addition to the education, I've got to have 3,000 hours of experience. And you gotta have a supervisor to get that experience. I don't agree with it. Coming out of Washington, D.C. It's a big stumbling block.
Well, it's coming out of Washington, D.C., but we also have some latitude with regard to that. I know the restrictions you're talking about. There are ways around that. Of course, we can set up some subcommittees and talk specifically about how we set some rules in place that this board can put in place to not subvert the federal, but what you clearly know is that Washington is putting more focus on the states to do what is necessary here in the states. And thank gosh, Washington's finally getting off our backs so that we can start doing some things that are necessary for our Kansas. Right? What's good for our Kansas is not necessarily good for folks in the Beltway, folks in San Francisco, folks in wherever. We have some latitude there. I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, that's there. That's not insurmountable. Not insurmountable at all.
You know, the Appraisal Institute has begun a program called Korea, which addresses part of Scott's comment about the experience. And we interviewed a young man here, what, 3 or 4 months ago. It was a Korea graduate. What he brought to us was outstanding. He had information, reports that absolutely were just outstanding, better than we've seen from a lot of instances. But I think that more importantly for us, what we're talking about is, it's a blueprint to move forward in the education system that you're talking about. And the way that they have approached it is not inexpensive, but they put together some scholarships and some opportunities for people to move through the process, and get the education and then get the hands-on that they need. But it's all
Well, that's where Pell Grants or something similar pay for that
that's right.
experience.
Absolutely, absolutely, you're absolutely correct, but you touched on another issue, and it's a primary issue, it's a critical issue, that I want you to work on, Mr. Chairman, with your board, and that is identifying barriers to entry. Legislature set up a mechanism where we can talk about what barriers to entry. What we've got to do is we've got to eliminate a lot of this mess. Right? That keeps people from participating in the workforce. So I would like, talking specifics, I'd like the board to have, start identifying, really focusing on what barriers to entry exist for appraisers, abstractors, home inspectors, the barriers you have. Because there is a committee that's set up that is actually asking for those kinds of barriers. We need to eliminate those barriers to entry where possible, where we don't want to let anybody. Here's the deal: we want to protect the integrity of the profession. Okay, first and foremost, and we want to protect the safety of the Arkansans. Second, okay. But you know, we've got too many arbitrary barriers to entry. Not just here. I've got 20 other divisions within DLM. Too many things that are just barriers that have just gone on through the years. Gatekeeping barriers to keep people out when we had too many. Now we got too many. Okay? And we're in dangerous state, not just in this board, but in all the other 20 boardrooms, of having barriers to entry that are preventing us from having tradespeople. Okay? We've got to start weeding this out, and we've got to stop turf protecting and stop gatekeeping and bring some people in. Keep in mind those parameters that I just mentioned. Those in mind: protection, health, safety. But if it's something that's out there that's just ridiculous, we need to have rules. And we need to go to the legislature and talk to them, because they're going to be open now. They're going to be open now more so than they ever have in the past to elimination of barriers to entry. We need to make hay while the sun shines, because the clock flips, things flip. We're going to promote these occupations. Now's the time. Mr. Chairman, I would encourage you to encourage your board start identifying barriers to entry. And I would encourage you to canonize that and put that in writing in a letter to the secretary, so that I'm made aware of those. Put it in such a way that you encourage me to vigorously attack these barriers to entry. I would appreciate that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, from the appraisal side, the kinds of barriers that I see are really set up by the appraisal foundation and requirements that are made for appraisers in terms of becoming part of the commission. Those are federal. And so, from the state perspective, if you, let's say, one of the barriers that I think most people see is requirement that you have a college degree. And a college degree for a lot of people isn't out there attainable. If that's a barrier and it's a federal regulation, how do we, as a state group, work through that barrier? Identify it as a barrier, or is there a way that in the state we can begin to try to encourage the feds to address it? I mean, I'm just asking.
No, and that's an appropriate question. Where there's conflict with federal, I think we approach our federal delegation. Because I think what we're seeing out of this administration is a desire for the states to take control, more control of those issues that impact their citizens. If we have a conflict, I think we approach our federal delegation. We let them know this is an issue that we have. It's impacting our occupations, and we go to them and do that. That's the nature of this board. Where we don't see conflicts with federal, and it's only state, we change it. We change it in a way that benefits our Kansas. When we have a federal conflict, we go to our federal delegation and we implore them to help us. That, at this point, I mean, that's all we get. Okay? But that's not the bulk of the barriers to entry that we have. Bulk of the barriers of entry that we have are state mandated issues across the spectrum, across the 20 different divisions that I have here. They're not federal. State. Things that are just piled up over the years. We got rules here, rules there, and they're just piled up. And then when I asked a director about this, and they said, well, it's the way we've always done. The way we've always done. That's the way we've always done it. It's unacceptable. It should be unacceptable to you. You're reviewing your mandates. I just told you where you are. You just clearly see the decline in the three areas. Okay? And the modicum of increases that you have here. I mean, that's not concerned about appraisers. It's concerned about abstractors, appraisers, and inspectors. You're one board.
It's gonna be a base push. I'm not anti, but you get a degree in accounting, pass the exam, things should have worked for you. Pass the bar, turn on. Pass the certified general exam.
I do get your points, but nothing is insurmountable if you start being creative. I'll give you an example. Accounting is one of my divisions. And what we are facing is a loss of CPAs. We're going. I stand what we've created with Tim is a new program. I've urged him to look at things outside the box. And so what we've come up with is a new idea. And this idea is to look at our 8th and 9th graders. And so what we're getting ready to do is put a program out with Secretary of Legal. We're going to start raising our, sometimes if they don't come to you, you gotta raise them. We're going to start doing is introducing a curriculum. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 grades. By the time they're sophomores, they're going to be able to test. And I hope I'm still around. But it's a program that has potential. It's raising. We're getting around that CPA threshold. By the time they're juniors in high school, they'll have the reps. They can take a test their sophomore year of college. They can be a CPA. And we've got CPAs on board with it. Why? Because they know they're in trouble. We don't have CPAs. So they had to think outside the box and say, well, they fought me. But now they're saying, oh, well, okay, yeah, we see where we need to go. We want to go that way. It is the same thing. It's just a matter of thinking outside the box. It's a matter of getting everybody around the table, talking about what the barriers are, saying what's federal, what's state, and figuring it out.
I think it goes beyond that. I think we need to recognize that just as in every endeavor, local and federal tension exists. And I go to DC every May and deal with appraisals and all types of real estate issues. And I've seen a continual push for mega data to start gathering enough information so that you all become data collectors. And they do the appraisal in DC. And I watched that with the subprime lending debacle. It wasn't any law that was passed, but the regulatory aspects put Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in a position to ruin the wealth of millions of people. And I've seen 4 or 5 examples. One is the new form that they're coming out with that appraisers are going to have to use. It's going to take twice as long to do the appraisal. It'll cost twice as much for buyers. I saw a case last year where Fannie Mae allegedly rejected comps from an appraiser. And then I later found out that they can't do that. So maybe it was the lender, which the lender would have violated their regulatory responsibility. This last spring in our appraisal meeting in DC, we talked about data collectors. And all of this augurs toward less local responsibility and control and more in DC, and that's fatal to the real estate community. So I agree with the 2-year college. I agree with reducing the number of hours and everything. But we're going to have to push back beyond the legislative issue. It's the regulatory issue. And that's where we've got a delegation that could maybe do some good.
I don't think we have any disagreements.
Yeah.
I agree with you totally. I just think that is an issue that is separate and apart from bringing people into the occupation to begin. I think once they get in, they're going to have to deal with that.
There won't be an occupation in 10 years if we don't change that trajectory.
Now, I almost have to agree with you. But we've got to do something in the end. All right? We've got to do something in the interim. And what's in the interim is put people in the pipe. Because what we're seeing is that we don't have people. And so if we don't continue to try to come up with, as a board, people into the pipeline, then we're not going to be able to have people that are going to even have to very valid point. I think that's a concern, but it's a higher level concern. That while it's appropriate concern, but it's not your immediate concern. You've got to have short term, medium term, long term goals. Any strategic plan. You haven't developed a strategic plan for your three entities. You need to start working on it so that you have identifiable goals, short-term goals, medium-term goals, long-term goals, and put them into those boxes. Because if you start trying to think about overall concept, how you're going to do it, you'll just talk like state boards have talked for years. You'll be sitting in here having meetings and never accomplish anything. What you gotta do is you gotta compartmentalize things. Long-term, viable point. That's a long-term goal. Short-term goal, to address your immediate concern. That is, you don't have a pipeline. You don't have a pipeline. You got 93 abstractors, 1,500 appraisers, 364 home inspectors, going down over the last 5 years. Short-term goal has got to be focus on putting people in.
I think that starts with just identifying, most people don't know what abstractors do.
No.
Most people don't know
They
what
don't know.
appraisers are.
They don't.
And we get kids early on who are in the process of trying to make a decision about who they want to be, what they want to be, where they want to be. That starts early on. And it starts in junior high with, or high school, with some kind of introduction to these professions. That's when it starts.
Sure does. And that's why I'm gonna have Diana start going over some of these job fairs that we have at the Pulaski County School District, the Little Rock School District, and have Diana setting up tables. And that's why I'm bringing it to the board. Okay? Because we've got to start letting people know. But Diana's only one person. She gets her directive from you. Board. If you don't value that concept, if you don't get behind it, you don't buy into that need to address that primary need, then she can't do it. She won't have your support. She has my support. But if she doesn't have your support, you don't realize that you need to bifurcate or trifurcate these goals into short, medium, and long-term goals. You don't buy into that. She can't do that.
Doesn't it start to the curriculum with going away from, we gotta take the test, we gotta pass the test, we gotta do all this stuff. Does it start with that classroom teacher, with that classroom environment saying, hey, things we could talk about, look at some professions. Doesn't do that anymore.
Well, your question is kind of rhetorical. I think you know it's there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It has to be there. That's the nucleus for moving something forward.
Well, that's why we're going to talk to Jacob and Lee about putting, about the emphasis, putting that there. He's helping us with accounting, and we're with accounting. We need to move forward with abstractors, appraisers, and home inspectors. Water inspectors. We're doing something with manufactured homes. So we're moving into the K through 12 space. This needs to be an initiative for the board. I just thought I'd throw it out there. I didn't want to take up much of your time, but I thought, and I do appreciate the discussion. But I wanted to throw out the ideas. And you don't see me very often because I don't need to be here. Got 20 others. A lot of them are a lot more difficult than you guys. Okay? You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Continue to do that. Have an open door policy. Didn't have to be a board meeting. You can call me, talk to me, disagree with me, need to do that. There's gonna come a time where we're gonna have to have rules, obviously. Right, we're doing right now as far as rules are concerned, though, you need to understand this. We're trying to go ahead and deal with the rules that the legislature has created that we have to address. Okay? We don't wanna get into rules that we've thought about. Right now, what we're trying to concentrate on is just those rules that the legislature has basically mandated that we come up with. Right? So we're gonna get those out of the way. And now, if we have other suggestions from the board, we'll deal with those. And we'll deal with those appropriately, and we'll talk about it. You should talk about it. There should be unanimity. Board on rules. Now, I'm saying this, folks, we're all family, right? I don't need you coming with rules where half of you want through, half doesn't. I'm not going to the legislature trying to promote a rule. It's not unanimous in the board. Not doing it because I've done that before with other divisions, and saw some board members go out and say things where if you can't reach unanimity on a proposal on a rule, don't expect me to carry it to the legislature. That's as definitive as I've gotten so far in this meeting, but I will make that totally clear. Not doing it. There's not unanimity. I'm not going to do that. Because the legislature will see divisions in the board. And that's not a good thing. Not a good thing. No. Just realize, we have a legislature. Okay. That's it. Now I guess I gotta go. But that's still, I'm not doing it. I mean, if there's not unanimity, if the family can't agree, if we're the family, if we can't agree on where we're going, why in the world would I start out? Half the family's trying to go to Chicago, the other's trying to go to San Francisco. This doesn't make sense. We're gonna lose.
Well, thanks for coming and giving us your vision. This really helps to connect on a local, federal, and state level. So appreciate you coming.
Thanks, sir. And I'm sorry to take up so much time. I thought I was gonna go over 10 minutes, but you guys helped. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
She took a phone call, but she was wanting to take a quick, maybe 5-minute break. I think there was others that would like that.
I would.
Yeah.
I just said mine.
Yeah. So we'll take 5 minutes and do what you need to do.
Recording stopped.
I've got is room would recommend to a child or a relative that they love that they get into the appraisal business.
See, I'm looking for through a totally different lens. I have a 14-year-old and he's asking all sorts of questions about home inspection. And if I was in appraisal, he would be asking questions about appraisal as well. I think it's imminent if, I really applaud the department for recognizing the need. My husband is in law enforcement. The Game and Fish pulled the 4-year requirement for applicants for their cadets. My husband's in Little Rock today at graduation for their next group of, new officers, and they do job shadowing. You have this 20 years. They actually take individuals that are wanting to apply and take them out on a road trip in the Game and Fish truck and show them. I mean, they recognize that their numbers are declining and they go active about it. So I really want to applaud the department for seeing that there's a need to do something different. And I feel very encouraged that the secretary is motivated to utilize
I think looking at it from a big, big picture, saying to someone, is a difficult statement to make. I mean, it really is. I had no idea what a appraisal was. I gotta tell you, taught school forever, and when it became necessary, to have an appraisal, I had to say, okay, what is that? I've come a long way, I gotta admit, but, you know, it's just not something you heard about or you hear about. And I think that, from the standpoint of a home inspector, until you need it, you don't really know it's there, and I think that may be part of our problem. A big thing that what the appraisal institute has tried to do with this may be a good way to take care of a lot of problems, but getting the Korea program up and running has been enormous.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, over the long term, is it gonna be something that's going to increase our numbers? I don't know. But,
Well,
you know, you're right, well, we got the federal oversight is killing us, killing us. And it's getting worse and worse and worse.
I texted French Hill this week, and I've been working on preparing a letter to send him as chair of Financial Services Committee. He's in a position to turn that around. And if we don't use that, we'll miss a great opportunity. And some of the examples I mentioned to, this pastor are things that I've seen that he needs to be aware of. And, if, I'm serious, if we had a big day, I went to an insurance committee meeting in DC 2 or 3 years ago, and they were talking about how many videos and pictures they got of all the houses around. And with this new lengthy appraisal form they're requiring, they're gonna gather more data. At some point, they're gonna say, you know, all we need is for data collectors. And we'll give you $100 to go out and measure this house. We can appraise it in DC.
But that's the push-pull
Pardon?
nationwide. It's
Yeah.
Everything is trying to centralize while, you know, local is always trying to claw back, usually it's successful. But that's in everything, right?
Well, once it goes to DC, it doesn't come back.
It's around
locally. And the same thing happened with subprime lending. And as it turns out, there's money in them there hills. The 3 leaders of Fannie Mae, Franklin Raines, Valerie Jarrett, and Jim Johnson got $32 million in bonuses because they set up a mortgage mix that favored subprime lending. You have an appraisal, and then we check this over the young man's boards on the appraisal. So, yeah.
Hey,
Still hold my license.
common sense doesn't go with it.
Common sense
Homeowners have.
Recording in progress.
Concrete cracks. Call meeting back to order. Let's see. We're just now to the approval of the board minutes from July 25 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Move to the committee reports. Start with the education, Sarah Stevens.
David, we're recording, correct?
We are picking up the number of submissions that we have for education. This is the education program. And so we'll be seeing even more lengthy agendas, you know, that Susie, Sarah, Laura, for their help and their stuff. And so we had to begin with classes from Appraisers e-learning, and we just want to take these as a group.
Yes, so that's.
They're asking for credit for their appraisal summit. It's really a 2-day operation. They're asking for 14 hours and 3 hours of CE for expert roles in litigation support, and 4 hours of CE and sensibility, and clarity and competence to the cost approach. Based on the information that provided, overview of the courses. Motion to that effect.
I make a motion to approve all four.
Any discussion? Motion second. All in favor? Any opposed? Next is the our managers and appraisers. They are asking 3 submissions. Risk 360 for 8 hours of CE. I think that's kind of a part of their overall look at what's going on in the profession. Then we have rapid fire case studies, 6 hours of CE, and the annual meeting, 4 hours of CE. All of that, I think that the rapid fire case studies and the annual meeting pretty well go together. I'm recommending that we approve these.
Motion to approve all three.
That's it. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's passed. The Appraisal Institute, online evaluation bias of their housing laws and regulations, 7 hours of CE, and synchronous class, analyzing defects, damage, and deficiencies in the AR, for 3 hours of CE. Then the Arkansas chapter of the Appraisal Institute has submitted an application for lunch and learn, but we're gonna bypass the approval of that. Commissioner Lilly and also Diana are going to be presenters. So we have to come back to that. Present that. Straightforward. So for the Appraisal Institute, let's just do A and B.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? 8-hour approval request, educating the future. And again, I think this is one of theirs that's more or less a convention overview type thing. Looked at their outline and recommend that we accept their request for 8 hours of CE. Any motion and second in discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? And, individual credit, yours truly. And we'll come back to that one. And then, the new vendor approval, Trusted Advisors, Gap Services LLC. And they are asking for CD, synchronous and classroom evaluation bias and fair housing. They actually submitted this one this time, and we will get through the process of trying to figure out who they are and what to write. And I did have that opportunity, I think they're well qualified, and so I would ask them to all. Motion and second. Discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? And then we have a proctor application, we pause. I would suggest that we approve this application for proctor. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Right,
So we go back to the Appraisal Institute, letter A, it's on chapter, lunch and learn. That's, I'm introducing that one, the instructors, with Diana and Sarah Stevens, so. Mr. Motion to accept that one.
What, this question, what are you learning?
that's all about appraisal.
Cook lunch.
And, actually, this is something that I started doing, this is kind of a big deal with chapters across the country. I don't see the background, started in Atlanta. State of the AI in Atlanta, go through all of the discussions. The guys that are coming, Hank Hillary, who's a realtor, and Michael McCobb, who's the statistics guy with the state, do a really great job. It's just basically a broad
Where is it gonna be?
overview on the end of October. You wanna come stop?
Yeah, send me something.
Okay, I will. It's gonna be at, okay, the Big Chanel Country Club, I'm at lunch there. And it's 3 hours of CD, but actually has 4.5, but I think.
Make a motion to approve it.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Okay, October 20th.
Ms. Sarah Stevens is also asking for individual credit for 8 hours. Of course, elevating more ethical awareness put on the International Right-of-Way Association in July. Entertain a motion. Approve that.
So maybe.
Second.
All in favor?
And then there's another two. Review the prices.
Oh. Another second 8-hour class, International Right-of-Way Association, reviewing appraisals of eminent domain.
Make a motion to approve.
All in favor? You want that 8 hours?
I want it. Keep that certification.
need to ratify that, sir?
Yeah, and you're done.
No, the report.
She's not correct.
Oh, she's got the home inspection.
Oh, she's doing home inspection too.
And then, page, yeah, home inspector. They were pretty prolific with all their acts this time. First one is the International Association of Certified Home Inspectors. And they are asking for credit for advanced inspections of electrical systems, 8 hours. Residential HVAC, 8 hours. Farming, bring them some people. 8 hours to see. Advanced inspection of pools and spas, 2 hours. Inspecting electrical systems, 2 hours. House inspect and pipe and president roads, 2 hours. Grading and drainage, 2 hours. Introduction to performing commercial inspections. I'm going to come back to that, number 8. Inspecting training issues, 2 hours. Everything you need to be successful, 2 hours. How to inspect a private report on plumbing systems, 2. And with the exception of number H, I'd like to recommend that we accept their classes for credit hours added.
Make a motion that we approve all classes with the exception of. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Let's go back to number H. Introduction to performing commercial inspection. We are talking about home inspectors. And I think that there might be a lack of conformity to what we do and to license. So I'd like to ask that we not accept that application. Simply because we don't do
License,
Right.
Fair inspectors.
we are licensing. So can I have a motion?
I pretty much did that with my first one. Well, no, I'll get it.
Well, I did, you said, no, you said with the exception of that.
Okay, I make a motion that we not approve the rate.
Anybody have a discussion? All in favor? Do we need to go back to that first motion or? We're okay. Yeah, okay. All right.
That may be, I agree with keeping it up because of the residentially, but that may be something to visit at some point because it is home inspectors doing the commercial inspections. I have a commercial inspection company that's specific to commercial applications. You can get certified through CCPIA or something. It's like an international, but it's specific to commercial, but that may be something at some point that gets discussed. Is what is happening is realtors are putting home inspectors in front of commercial buyers, and the home inspectors are doing the commercial inspections. That's who's showing up for it. So not necessarily pertinent to this moment because I don't think that's a residential application for that class, but just maybe something to kind of, in the course of growing the industry and trying to bring people in, if we can cast a wider net and encourage people that are looking for more beyond residential at the moment.
Then we have inspection certificate, certification associates. They're asking for 2 4-hour classes. Rivers and lake homes, your stocks, bulkheads, and lifts. And, Susan, we've got 4 hours and it looks like it's the same class. Do you know?
Pete Pappas was teaching the second one with Floyd.
Okay. All right, I think maybe what they did is they submitted both instructors. And, so we'll approve it, like it says, both instructors. That way, if Pappas, instructs, we're covered. Kids instruct.
I make a motion that we approve those. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? This is from the Arkansas Home Inspector Institute, running County and building for successful home inspection business, Garrison City, and, wood destroying ordinances, 3 hours. Those I recommend.
What's the, I'll second it, but I don't know, of course, like you said, with regard to the mold, any information you get is good, but, I guess if the termite company has a different feedback to the inspector, then what do you do?
I'll speak to that. So when I find any kind of suspected termite or something like that, I inform my client of that, and I use verbiage in my narrative to the extent of, although not a licensed pest control specialist, indications were observed, recommend verification. Because for me, that's another step of me protecting my client, because depending on what pest inspector shows up that day, I've seen them miss stuff. And so if I can give the heads up and say, make sure when your pest inspector comes out, you tell them that your home inspector did see indications, they should rule that out or look into it further. I think it's another way where we can cover ourselves if this is beyond the scope. However, here's more information for you, because I've just seen it too many times where they come through it, gloss over and miss things, and had a buddy who had to tear off, I mean, just 2 stories of termite damage because the guy didn't look in an exterior closet to see the tubes present, kind of thing. So I just, again, the more information, home inspections is really expanding beyond what it originally was and beyond SOP. I mean, we're doing both docs, we're fine, because I think out of necessity, because we're not being held accountable for things that are just reality beyond the scope. Whether it gets to any kind of point of litigation or reprimand, it does hit reputation, because people do not understand a lot of times what our limitations are and what SOP says. So I had an incident personally where we can't identify asbestos without testing. I have an error that says due to the age of the home may contain, however, had a termite guy come in that used to, especially goes, you got asbestos in your attic. Did your home inspector not catch that? And they don't know what my limitations are, and so I guess you got a bad review for something I'm not required to do. So the more information we can have, I'm not advocating that we have to see and cover everything, those moments happen, but the more we can be informed and the more that we can put in front of the client and quite honestly cover our butts, the safer I feel, the better I feel. I'd like to know more about it. I'd like to know, how do I know if it's active or inactive? Doesn't mean I have to tell them at the time of the inspection it's active or inactive, but it just helps me give them more information.
I think you're 100% accurate. People don't understand what your scope of work is, because until Wally brought it up, I didn't know that home inspectors weren't looking for mold. So, my argument was, when I get a home inspection, my thought is, I want to know if the roof is okay, the HVAC, if the foundation okay, and if you see any mold. Other than that,
There's a lot
that's
more.
not your job.
There's a lot more awareness now too of air quality and what we're breathing. It's respiratory health, especially with COVID stuff, respiratory health, people are much more, they're asking the question a lot more. I would say even the last couple of years, it's increased on the front end, and they call, do you check for this? Will you look for that? We're concerned that this is present. And so it's, again, with the commercial stuff, obviously that's really not what we're doing as home inspectors, but this stuff is falling into our labs and what we're doing now with the fine. So even if I can better look at a piece of wood and say this was pest damage previously versus moisture damage and differentiate, it helps me write more specifically, because from what I'm understanding, a lot of the complaints coming in, a lot of it is the fear of ambiguity and not being able to address things with specificity and people not knowing how to approach it or who to call after the fact and stuff like that.
Well, if you okay with that.
Yeah, I'm finding out, years ago, there used to be the state plant board that oversaw termite companies, and they were given strict guidelines not to go beyond when, dealing with wood-devouring insects. And so that's kind of the background I've got. I certainly think that it's good for an inspector to be able to say, there might be some questions here, because, I can't count the number of times I've seen flaws in termite. In fact, one termite inspector said, yeah, on some of these homes, I'll just take a book and crawl in the crawl space and read for about 15 minutes and leave. And never do the inspection, but, and so when we sell the house, years later, we find that there's been, rot and leaks that have been going on for a long time, and although that's not their responsibility to deal with leaks, that sets the habitat that attracts termites. So, you know, we live in a flawed world, so having two people look at it is not a bad thing. The problem is that I experienced, one extreme example is that inspector going way beyond his expertise to try to identify, scare the buyer off, when there wasn't a problem. And, so, but again, we live in a perfect world. I like this.
I think those guys are gonna do that anyway, whether there's a CE class that give the information or not, yeah.
All right, so, all in favor of these classes being approved? We are down to the next side of home inspectors, report writing, basic to ballistics, conducting quality electrical inspections.
Approve both. I'm sorry, I've got another question. What are ballistics? Bullet holes or what?
I was wondering that myself, it's just like, from last, you know, just from the basics to the heavy stuff, like foundation issues, structural concerns, that was my interpretation.
Yeah, and I think in looking at what they submitted, it was more or less,
The alliteration.
yeah, the approach that you take.
Okay.
Very basic to very bombastic, I guess. Motion. Okay. Very good. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. On to, Arkansas Association of Inspectors, plumbing, PDX plumbing, 2 hours of CE, moisture intrusion inspectors in residential structures, 2 hours of CE, and defective building and electrical products, 2 hours of CE.
Make a motion to approve all three.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? And, home inspector qualifying education course. Now, this one is, Arkansas Professional Home Inspection Course, 80 hours of qualifying education. But you have to have, correct, to, right, and it's divided into classroom and, there's actual on the ground type thing. 16 hours. This was, the submission was 64 hours of classroom, 16 hours of visitation, site work, et cetera. And, so in number A, for a classroom and secrets. Anybody? I would say, okay. I have a motion. Second. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Then we have the International Association of Certified Home Inspectors, and this is qualifying again, and this is the 80-hour pre-registration course for 80 hours of qualifying registration. Our process. I'll say, okay. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Abstractors on that,
No.
They never say that.
They don't, well, they don't have some, they don't, they answered your questions, they don't have to provide it.
Kind of queuing.
They don't do that.
Actually, a lot of them would submit education because they thought they had to, even though they didn't, and it's all time.
It was only 2 hours.
2 hours an hour?
Well, you have to pass the test. They do have a pretty comprehensive, taking very long, legal descriptions and drawing them.
The abstractors, and they're still licensed
Yes.
because they didn't want to lose that license and have to retest.
Brian, your work for credit, you learn how to draw.
I think I could, I surveyed for a few years, but
Yeah, right.
I don't want to.
I wouldn't want to draw.
So you have to come up with stuff.
Do we track or have a way to track, just kind of in light of the conversation this morning, I'm curious, with all of the like qualifying educational stuff, I'm wondering if we have a track of how many people enter the class at each year in the state versus how many go from the class to taking the test, and then how many transition from taking the test to actually getting their license. Because for some of these classes, I'll go visit and talk about inspections, and there's a bunch of people in these classes. And then from those, some follow up, and a lot of those people don't make it past the test. And I'm wondering, we're talking about on-ramps and, obstacles to growth and things of that nature. We're measuring not only how many are starting and not finishing, but also which classes and which systems are doing a better job of producing people that follow through too. Because we're talking about classroom and education being a big part of that jump starting. I'm wondering who of these different organizations that are doing those 80 hours are doing a better job of producing actual home inspectors out of the program.
And we do not track that. I do not know how many folks sign up in our courses. The only thing that I track is how many pass all the exams and apply and receive registration.
Is that something we could ask of the people that we're approving of submittal of just not names and data, but just this?
The providers have to know that.
I think, because for a business move, it'd be wise for them to say, more of our graduates go on to be licensed inspectors than any other, whatever. But to me, that would be a good litmus for where are we losing people? Because I think a lot of people are taking the class. I just don't think they're getting across the finish line.
We know the pass fail rate on Appraisers. We know the same thing on home inspectors.
I think it's high fail rate for that test.
And I have some comments about that in a minute, that it's higher than I thought it was, because all I see are people that pass. So and then they have to wait apparently 30 days between testing. If you fail, you have to wait 30 days before you take the test. So it's a higher fail rate than I realized.
Is that something we'll come back to later, or we want?
Yes, let's come back to that, because I attended a class this past Monday, a qualifying education class, and for home inspectors, and they sent me home with some marching orders and things they wanted me to talk to the board about. So when I get to my report, I've got some comments there as well.
When you look at the failed test results, does it show where they took their education course? Because if it shows that there's one course setting that was at a higher failure rate, you might talk with them about how to improve their.
We have that information on the Appraiser side.
The process is different. For home inspector registration, they're out in the world taking their class, taking their tests, then they come to us and apply. And we register versus appraisers who have to go through the process of getting that education, then becoming an apprentice. Then we have eyes on them, and we know what they're doing. We know what they're testing. We know whether they're passing or failing. So that's the difference. Is the process.
That's why I heard before.
She's gonna include all three.
Oh, good.
Let's move to financial report.
The financials to be read for today, $1,996,100,710. I make a motion to accept.
number is down and it's going to get us more. We had some expenses that are coming up, but we had to make our AFC National Register pass-through fee payments, which brought us down about $75,000. So see it less than last time. That's the reason it's the pass-through fees that we collect and remit to the subcommittee. So this time I know exactly what I'm doing. You're fine. You are absolutely fine.
On the staff reports, Stein.
Okay, for a lot of reasons, which we'll talk about in a moment, we didn't get through as many complaints as I wanted to this past, since our last board meeting. But for appraisers, I do need to make a correction on the report that says from Brian Hester and Sarah Stevens, but it was from Scott McKinnon. We did look at 4 cases for jurisdiction, 251160 through 251163. We had jurisdiction on 2 and not on 2. And we looked at one for probable cause, case 241138. The allegations were errors and omissions, and the recommendation is to dismiss. And that is my report for both home inspectors and appraisers.
Director's report. Ratify.
Yes.
Staff report, the investigator report. Make a motion. Second by Sarah, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Now the director.
Okay, on the director's report, I have a little bit longer report than I normally do. So we are coming upon the end of the year renewals for both trainee appraisers, on-site registered appraisers, and all of our home inspectors. And I have at a home inspector class, I promise I'd make some things easier. I'm following through with my promise. If you have another license in another Arkansas, your home inspector, if you've got any other professional license in Arkansas, like a contractor's license perhaps, all you have to do now is say yes and say, I have a contractor's license. That was, you were at that meeting, there was a complaint about you making you list the dates you had it and all sorts of things. That is being fixed, so that should go much quicker. The difference though is we had a lot of problems last year with continuing education for home inspectors. You are going to have to upload it through the ELP system. That is the only mandatory field, but you will have to upload your CE with your renewal form. For appraisers, they're going to learn that process now as well. They're going to upload their own CE into the ELP system since they're on ELP. So we're doing the best we can moving forward, getting ready for that renewal. As most of you know, for appraisers, I teach a supervisor training class once a quarter. With the availability of the class online, the number of students had dropped, but the class we had in August had 16 students, and most of those were folks wanting to come into the profession. Several supervisors were there as well, so you are able to match up, but it is hard to match up with the supervisor. For appraisers, 2026 is an education year. So appraisers are going to own 28 hours of CE, including the newly required bias class and the use update.
While we're on the bias class, you think we could have the class here with all the board members, the board member bias class?
I don't know why we couldn't do that, but that would require the secretary's approval. If you would like for me to, if the board would like to put together, to attend the bias class here, I'm happy to see what I can do as far as putting much that.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll work on that.
And is that useful first?
That was for everybody. Everything we, as the secretary said, we are one board. Everybody's invited to everything. If home inspectors have an education class you guys think would be good for us all to take, let us know. If you're down, we'll sign up. We'll be there.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
just because that roof has a hole in it, doesn't mean that it's bad, that's the box.
So could I ask a question back to the bias class? That's required.
Yes.
And so we don't, do we have to have it? We don't have to have it by the first of the year.
No, you have to have it by your renewal date. Your
Okay.
first renewal after January 1, which would be June 30th.
Okay.
It's gonna run every even year, just like you said.
It has to be. Dennis and I had this discussion yesterday. It's got to be in the same education cycle. I do not have the ability to track it, and nor will appraisers track it.
Does the appraisal population matter?
Well, they're learning they have to have, they should know. We've been talking about it for the
We
past.
all got an email Wednesday morning.
All I read was my hours was wrong.
We have reheard.
Well, and what I do want to remind appraisers is if you're ever going to upgrade from the conventional level that you're in now, which most of you are not, you want to go ahead and take the test now. Because otherwise, if you ever decide to upgrade, you'll have to retake the 7-hour portion of the classes.
So we don't have to be tested.
This is not tested unless you want to upgrade. You're as high as they go, Scott, so you don't have to worry about
What's
it.
the point, right?
Well, we're not even going there. We're moving on. So now then, let's talk about home inspector qualifying education and testing. I did go to visit with the group on Monday, and I learn more every time I'm around home inspectors, and I learned a lot. And the manual that you guys have to learn is like 5 inches thick. It's huge. And this is what I was told in the class. It's geared towards northern climates. It's a lot of things that you have to learn that are solely for taking the test and passing the test. And they wanted to know if the board would look into making at least a region or state-specific curriculum.
That's a good idea.
Now, home inspector members, what do y'all think?
I think the test is one of our biggest problems with getting into home inspections, because I try to be really, I've talked to a lot of other home inspectors and their experiences on stuff, guys trying to get into it. I get people all the time, like, I might think it looks fun or something, or out there, but, the test is always a big thing, and just realistically, to be transparent about it, it does not make you pass that test, does not make you a good inspector. A lot of the instructors I've talked to tell me the hardest one is we want to be known for everything. But I think it's too heavy on the front and too light on the back as far as getting into the profession. So the test is, the classes don't prepare you for that test, period, any of them. I've talked to instructors, people that take the classes, and people that ask for advice. I'm like, go on like notches, different things, take as many practice tests as you can, because they're giving you all the information you need to be a good home inspector, but there's too much of a disparity between that test and what you're doing every day. I don't know if I passed it, I took it again today, because it's just so study specific.
Well, it's one of the things we've talked about ever since we became on board is the need to have Arkansas specific things. And fire protection is one board that's here. It's another agency that does their own testing, which is fully capable. We could offer the test. PSI is where they're taking it now. That if we needed to, we could offer the test. I mean, that's not been impressive to me in a lot of ways, having to go through PSI. It's hard to schedule the test. And then we had the gentleman that was able to use his phone and felt bad for cheating on the test and best. So.
I trained,
You trained him?
I made him come to the board.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, he made a joke. I was training him. He's a super good kid. And wife's praying, a lot of pressure trying to get him for side joke that I'm going to cheat on him. And I said, well, you're going to go to the board, set the consequences, which you're not going to do this without integrity. all of a sudden. He did. He's not
He
doing
did.
home inspection. Yeah, he,
He and his wife came and sat here, that's what we talked about,
so.
Well, so it's just one of those things that I think we need to really have some more discussion about. Because I think there is a disconnect between what they're learning, more so than I think, and I think appraisers is bad enough, but more so than I've seen in appraisers, because now they told me they spent several days discussing things just simply to pass the test. And that's too much when you're only doing 80 hours, and I know that seems insurmountable sometimes, but when that's it, let's make those 80 hours meaningful. And make them the best home inspector coming out that they can be.
I like the idea of when we do pass it as a national exam. I like that we're on the same level with the people around us in that regard. But I've heard, and this could be way off, but I've just heard that the fail rate's only 70% on that test. And I know several people personally that like either they took it once and it crushed them, and they're just like, I'm done, or some they went back twice and crushed them. I mean, and again, I think that there needs to be, you need to work, because this is a career that, like, you can go in year one and hit 6 figures. So you need to have some skin in the game. But I think the test is too hard and the training's too light. Because I think the test is knocking people out that would be phenomenal at their job. But I also think people are getting through the test that are not getting any kind of training on the backside of that. And it's kind of a weird thing with home inspections, because I know we kind of briefly, there was like the shadowing element to this, and then it went away. And that's a really tricky thing in home inspections, because you're either training somebody for free or they don't want to train, but you're essentially training your competition as soon as you're done that's going to step out. So you're investing all that time, so it's it's hard to get the right systems in place to get the field training necessary. Because until you get out there, you can know the book in and out. Until you get out there and you're making those. I had a guy shadow me yesterday. I said, man, the hardest thing in this job is not finding problems. It's knowing how to navigate and communicate with them. Because that's where, if I see a crack in a slab, I have to now make a decision right now. Do I like throw the F word into a report, right? Foundation, or do I err on the side of like, nah, I'm not worried about this, or try to straddle that and say, well, this was observed, keep an eye on it. Those are the decisions that you need, unless you have somebody with you or an access point. How do you do that? How do you be effective? Because we just have a lot of people that get through, then they don't have any help when they get out, and then they get sunk through litigation, or they have a bad experience. Now realtors don't want to talk to them, because I don't want to like open this whole can of worms right now, but there's like, to me, every time we step on a job, we're in an ethical dilemma, because we have a responsibility to that client in front of us. But if that agent doesn't like us, we don't get referred. And so we're constantly having to not compromise the integrity of giving them the right information and equipping them on that home, while doing so in a way that's going to get us called back, because that's how we build and grow our businesses. That's why there was such an influx during the market in 2020 and 2021, is we had a lot of new agents, which means a lot of new doors for home inspectors, because they don't already have their guy or their guys. They give a list of 3 full star next to time one. But that whole process kind of hinders. And then we passed a rule that said, well, you can't give out any cookies or drinks, whatever, and there's people that I'm pretty sociable. I can communicate pretty well. I can go into a room and talk to these agents. There's people that cookie is their only icebreaker. Like, I brought you something, I'm nervous, I'm a stutter, I can do a killer home inspection, our presentations are hard, and so we've kind of put some more stumbling blocks into these new guys. It gets harder to get into the business, and so I'm pretty passionate about this. I've got other inspectors, we're always talking about how to get into this, what does it look like around here, what problems do we have, what frustrations are there, even extending into people that want to get into this, they want to make a living. We're one of the lowest paid home inspectors in the country. And then on the flip side of that, we carry some of the most liability going into the transaction. What we're responsible for get paid down. So there's a lot of, you got to really want it, to get into it. I don't think home inspections is something that people just wake up and feel called to go out and become. I think it's something that you get into and then realize maybe you were made for it. Is that a fair way to characterize that? So removing the obstacles to getting in there and realizing how awesome it will be, how many people you can help and serve, helping people get over the fear of missing something into the excitement of what can I find for my client and equip them with. process, I think, needs to be looked at to how we can help. Does that mean, I don't want to overshare it, overtake time here, but to me, that whole process can be looked at it.
Yeah. Can you get a copy of the test? And then maybe let the home inspector board members rewrite the exam. Southern version.
I don't know how that matches up with the curriculum course material they're teaching. I think a first step, Mr. Chair, is just for us to open the door and maybe start having some discussions about what, along the lines of the secretary's request of how can we make this better? How can we remove these barriers to entry? What can we do that would benefit new people coming in and not harming people that are already home inspectors? We don't want to do that either. So, okay, sir.
I talked to a home inspector recently who's retired, and his concern is that we not only have enough home inspectors, but that they're quality. And it might not be a bad idea as you're working through this to maybe contact a couple of home inspectors that have 30, 40 years experience and are not presently out there competing, to kind of give some feedback or insight as to some of the things they've seen that's changed. I know one of the things that I pull my hair, I used to have a full bit of hair. The city of Little Rock does not uphold the building code for decks. So I'm continually dealing with inspectors that say this deck wasn't built according to the city code. And they'll name all these things. And so my seller either has to, when he bought it, as new construction, the city said, good deal, it's done right. Well, now he's got to go in and support that deck up against the brick facing, because no deck is supposed to have any support from the building, from the house, all stuff like that. So I would include in that course, how do you deal with a locality that does not enforce the building code, and then you've got property 10, 15 years later that's in good shape, but the inspector has to know that it wasn't built according to code. And somebody with 30, 40 years experience, 1,000 inspections could help maybe make that more.
For me, it's always a conversation, because the statistic is 10% of decks in America are actually built to like standard. It's always changing. And after the deal in Florida with where the deck was pulled off the house and everything went from nails to leg screws and bolts.
Yeah.
And so I'm in conflict. 2 inspections yesterday, I had both inspectors had a conversation, like, this isn't correct. You know, the deck, like, it's not falling over. I'm not. However, if something happens, you have recourse. You know, the joist hangers that these are on fasteners. So decks are like a constant thing. And then we're also not code enforcement. So we're best practices and things like that. And so that's another sticky thing, because another demotivator for home inspectors is the litigious nature of the industry. You know, that's one, like, again, I want to harp on every time I sit here, but like 1 year to 3 on liability, that scares the mess out of home inspectors because of how quickly things change and move. So for me, it's always a conversation. Yeah, I will never, just not to tell myself, but I'm not ever going to put in black and white, like, yeah, it's super stable today, however, because the minute that thing falls over, said this, but that moment of not misleading but educating the client on this was acceptable at the time, or this varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. This is why I'm writing it, why they're asking for it. This is how it's prepared. But a lot of that would come down to what are the requirements or the stipulations on for installing decks? What are they required on the needle license? Just a general thing, because a lot of new constructions, the reality sometimes it's never really a problem. The way it's put on, but it's wrong. So it's just another hoop.
Okay, moving on to a change to professional liability for errors in collisions insurance. It's amazing how my phone stopped ringing after the deadline passed. We worked very hard with home inspectors. We had 13 home inspectors that we suspended, which was down from 120 August fifth in. So we only had 13. Of that 13, there's been two now, I think, that are wanting to come back. No, just one.
No.
Yeah, just the one guy that wants to come back. The vast majority of those said, or the ones that didn't, at least 11 or 12 of them said, I never want to do another home inspection again, but I'm not writing a letter to go and active suspend me. So they knew well in advance they were going to be suspended, and they were happy with that. They were angry about the change, and they said they just don't do enough work to support the increase in cost. And I've heard stories that it went from $100 a year to $2,000 a year. So I'm sure for the newer guys it was expensive, but I wanted to double check with the board because this was a change in legislation. This is not something that we did. This is something the legislature did. The folks that we did suspend when they want to come back, I don't think it's fair to charge the civil penalty. That's just me. I need to know if the board wants them to be charged any sort of civil penalty.
How much is it?
Well, what we've charged in the past, we're gonna talk about that in a little while, we've charged them, for the monthly renewals, when they don't, and they get plenty of notices. We call, we email, we send certified mail, we send regular mail, we charge them $250. And we could do a lesser amount, but I don't know that they're already being hit with such an increase in the cost of insurance. I don't see the board to tag on an additional charge. That's me. Guys, tell me what you want them to do. Is just simply submitting me an updated certificate of insurance enough? Okay, so for my 13 folks, once they just get their insurance back in place, we're gonna get them back active, get them back working. Okay. In August, the home inspectors were on the occupational licensing subcommittee agenda. They seriously had only a couple of questions, and most of those revolved around chair. But our report was reviewed, and at the end of the year, they will submit their report from all of the agencies that they have reviewed during 2025. So we'll be watching for that. I don't expect that they're going to recommend general inspectors no longer be licensed. That would not be. I just don't see that happening. Everything went fine. So I think we're okay there. One thing back up on appraisers. As I've mentioned, this is an education year for appraisers. Last renewal cycle, and I've noticed a trend, home inspectors do a better job of this, honestly, but appraisers wait until the last day to start taking education, and it's 28 hours you have to have. So we have this trend of a appraiser taking all of their education online and turning in 28 hours in a completed in a 24-hour day.
Is that the way you guys make it?
So my suggestion is we limit appraisers to 14 hours a day, because logistically, that's really all they can do, and do it right. And we need to hold them to the standard of doing it right. Make it a policy that you will not accept more than 14 hours on any day completed on the same day.
How are we gonna get the word out?
We'll email everybody.
Okay. Just
We're
so they
getting
know.
good.
No, just don't hit complete until the next day.
We're not telling them that. But if you get an email, if you happen to get an email from this board that has a little red exclamation point on with it, read it, please. Please read it.
In its entirety.
Yes, in its entirety.
Do you have any way to track the number of people who open or don't open their email?
I have no way of tracking that, nor do I have time to track that.
They're not opening emails. I don't know how they're in business.
In for the entire board members for licensing pool, that it's your livelihood, guys. Open the emails from your board. But I did get a lot of complaints about that recently. Appraisers, we're going to hear a lot more about property data collectors, but we're not talking any more today. That we will have lengthy conversations about those moving forward. And I have jerk duty.
Jerk duty?
I have jerk duty until the end of the year.
Where is your editor?
By jury and court.
And I will be out the week of Thanksgiving. And that is all for today, so I'm good. Want to ratify that?
Yes. And motion to ratify the director's report. All in favor?
I-
For business.
Right back to me. Okay, well, can I throw one of those out here? Talk about that as well. There is with your packet, I think it's the last piece, the last document in your packet. There was a new act that was passed, Act 505 of 2025, that went into effect on August 5th, that says, for a member of the State Board of Appraisers, Appraisers, and Home Inspectors who attends a meeting remotely to be counted towards a quorum or to vote, the board shall, at the beginning of the meeting, verify the identity of the member attending remotely, allow other members and members of the public who are physically present at the meeting or attending at the meeting remotely at all times to hear the member attending remotely, observe or otherwise understand a vote of the member attending remotely, and know the identity of the member attending remotely when that member is speaking or voting, and allow a member attending remotely to hear the other members in attendance at the meeting with any public comment. This is a policy that the board is going to need to adopt. So, sir, we need to get a motion to adopt this remote attendance policy.
Did she make motion, Sarah did, second, all, any discussion about it? All in favor, yeah, we want a choice.
Okay,
So,
I just need to get it in the minutes that you guys know and have adopted it. The second part of that, it says a member who attends one of our board meetings remotely shall not receive mileage, so you don't get paid mileage, so we'll rock it back when you attend remotely, or per diem, and by that, they mean per diem for any incidentals or meetings. So we're not gonna buy your lunch, even though you attended by Zoom. It brings up the question of stipends. It has been the policy of this board, well, the board voted on it, it's been the policy in the past that, we don't pay stipends if you, the $60 stipend, if you attend by Zoom. Mr. Chair, would you guys vote whether you want to pay stipends or not pay stipends? Makes me no difference.
discussion on that?
Well, I think we need to encourage board member presence. And I mean, it's paying $60, sitting in pajamas on board.
See, I kind of had a different thought, because I'm gonna be here, but as an appraiser, you stop, take an hour out of your day to attend the board meeting by Zoom. It's worth $60. To me as an appraiser sitting there, I'm losing that $60.
Say it does not come near covering what you're losing in your time when you could produce.
I understand that as well. We much prefer the board members to be here in person.
And that's something that you could add to the policy if you wanted to put that in clear.
I don't think that there's a difference between not being here and being chronically not. And, that would be my concern, it's just simply over and over and over, lack of attendance. That's different. And if you address that differently, or could you say,
So you have to be in attendance for so many per year.
Okay,
Far
so
into it.
y'all are getting too far in the weeds. Nobody has the time to monitor that Sarah was here in person 12 times, but Sarah was here 11 times. Because we're gonna have some more board meetings and probably hard on their schedule, but they'll probably have Zoom access.
My perspective on it is, when I took the position on the board, it was with the intent to serve, and that meant that I would forfeit personal time or economic time. I do appreciate the fact that I'm in person, yes.
A problem with the previous board where we had members that just wouldn't come, right? They Zoomed every time.
Yes, but when we were the appraiser board, that turned into a problem. Because we had people that were disinterested and would only attend by Zoom.
Now, do you want to address that?
I'm sorry I asked the question at this point. But again, I see all sides of this. It's $60, it's not, but we do need to encourage people. We only work well if we're all in the same room together. And I'm sorry, that's not my sentence. We only become a board that is not appraisers, abstractors, and home inspectors, but our board if we're together. So from my perspective, I agree with Scott that maybe the incentive is, and $60 is not, you guys are very successful in your profession. $60 is not gonna make or break you. Let's just face facts. It's not. So, but I also see the other side of, we do have quite a bit of money, but I think it's better to give it as a discounted fees than giving it to board members. So if we want to try to eat down our fund balance a little bit, perhaps next year we look at reducing the fees a little bit more for everybody, rather than, but again. Okay. So it is, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another, to be quite honest.
Not much of incentive to get you to show up, but it's some sort of incentive, so I'm okay with that. It's like, unless you show up.
We have not the past, right?
No, we have not.
We started at COVID, right?
Right, we did COVID, we voted early on that because of the fact you're not spending the 2 hours to drive there and back, there's 4 hours out of your day, you were, because we had a lot of board meetings when COVID first started. And so because they were short, a lot of them were, 30-minute meetings, and so we voted that you did not get paid stipend if you attended by Zoom or remotely. So if we want to continue that policy, that's great. I just need you,
Just continue that.
would you vote on that one for me so I can add it to the policy?
All in favor to continue not paying a stipend to attend the board meeting by Zoom or remote? Second? I'll say second. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
What was that?
I have no
I
idea.
think it's recorded.
I think it does.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so then brings up my next question of, do we want to continue with when a home inspector, now that we've got everybody with professional liability or E&O insurance, we do send reminders. A lot of them renew they do renew each and every month during the month. We occasionally have someone who just absolutely refuses to give us an updated certificate of insurance. And I know this is a little bit different and that we are following the department's policy, but for those of you that don't know, now again, let's say your policy expires on January 31st. We have reached out to you in November and December and January, or at least December and January, telling you by email and by regular mail, which is, we don't have to do that by the statute, but we try to be helpful, reminding you that your insurance is about to expire. 2 weeks before, we'll call and say, we still don't have your certificate of insurance, and your insurance is about to expire. And then we still won't get it. So what we're doing now is on February 1st, when they're expired, we are suspending their right, we're not suspending them. We are sending them a letter, a certified, emailed, and regular mail letter that says you're going to be suspended in 30 days. So they've still got 30 more days to clear up before they're suspended. But at that point, we have been including a consent agreement that they are charged a $250 civil penalty for not following the statute. Statute says that they'll provide us this before the policy expires. Our current policy expires is what the statute says. So we have done a consent agreement and charged them $250 for not maintaining their certificate of insurance with us. They are, and at any time during that 30 days, they can avoid suspension by simply remedying the problem. So do we want to continue with that since we're now a different type of insurance? My question is always. Now, as far as the 30 days, that is a department policy. We don't suspend. Even though their insurance has lapsed, we don't suspend for 30 days. We give them 30 days notice before we suspend the license every time.
We stand firm. The mindset behind it is protecting the buyers or so then. So I'm looking beyond the
Motion second. Okay, I'm about to shut up now. Home inspector contract investigator position. I had 8 applicants that applied for that position, and I'm asking you now, what are my next steps? What do you say? What do you guys want me to do? That's a great idea.
To hire the home inspector, contract investigator, and on this 3-person committee, actually 4 persons, because as a chair, I'm on every board or every committee, but it's not simply the home inspectors. That's, and I was part here, so we get to appoint you to the committee and give them the authority.
I think that's perfect.
That's wonderful.
With that, I'm not sure what the caveats are, but 2 of those, that applicants work for my commercial company each one. So I don't know if that's like a conflict on this. They, great, but I just don't want to. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm looking at the attorney right now.
I think at that point, it would be up to you to decide. If that's a conflict of interest for you to decide to hire one of your employees to work in another position.
Yeah, can I discuss it for a minute, get some thoughts on this? Because the reason they applied for it is because that position really needs to be somebody who can effectively be strictly SOP and not somebody who's gonna come in and want to show everybody else how smart they are. If there's a breed of home inspectors out there that would love to walk into a situation like that, I'm just being honest, walk in a situation like that, but, oh, they should have seen, they should have, you have to be able to look through objective lens to say, this is why they did or did not, this is why this did or did not happen. And be able to look out for just you have to have a passion for the buyer and who we're advocating for, while still understanding the restraints and limitations. So I think you gotta have the right, personality to fulfill that role and do it well. But I know both of these guys would be great. So you know what I'm saying? There's a bias because I know that better than what's going to be, and I know their excellence and how thorough they are, and those different things. So I don't know, maybe it could be super objective in that moment.
You can always reduce yourself conversation on talking about those 2.
So I'd like to be there. I'd like to be a part of that process though, too,
Right.
because it's going to impact me. It's going to impact all of us. How this is happening.
What do you think it could be a check?
I can't. Yeah, I just don't want there to be a perception of, you know what I'm saying? That would be my concern is a lot of people's perception of county. And even if everybody was unanimously agreed that one was gonna go in, my vehicle's attached to it, I'd be concerned that that could open up a moment of, well, they did this, and he's on that position because Matt's on the board, you know, so.
And that certainly could happen, and so that's why you would be asked, and it could be objective. If you thought there was an appearance of not being able to be objective, you could accuse from final decisions to who to hire.
So I can be involved in the process without having to make a decision at that. Because I know, they work for my commercial ACPI, so they each have their own residential companies. But I think it would look weird if one of my employees was hired additionally based on my, so.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be a problem. So, but I don't get the vote unless there's a tie. So Michael and Sarah vote on one, and I'll make the final decision at that point, but if you recused, as a recused.
Because I'd like to be able to ask questions and be part of the things out. Sure, you can have value.
I think it's okay, everybody else is okay.
I think that this committee is gonna need to meet to set the parameters, and Aaron and I have talked a little bit about, it's gonna have to be, you're only gonna be looking, it's gonna have to be a pretty strict set of rules, it's gonna take the right person. And I think initially, the way I view this working, we hire maybe 3 people to start. We don't have to continue, we don't have to use them if we don't like them, or if we don't see that they're doing the job we need them to do. And I think we gotta have a bench here, because home inspector complaints are increasing. And we need to be able to adjudicate these quickly, and I don't need people that are working, I don't need one of your guys doing somebody that else is in Hot Springs. If we need somebody, a home inspector from outside that area to come into the new area. I think there's gonna have to be a lot of parameters of exactly how this position's gonna work. But I do think we need to select more than one person to fill this role.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have like one of them is Hot Springs, one's Jonesboro. And so that you can go outside of it, you're not in direct
Right.
competition, you don't even know them, you're just.
And that's the way it would have to be. That-
So the home inspectors have specialty, you know a lot of appraisers only do hotels or only do certain kinds of property.
Only like in a background moment where they may have medical nutrition or others, but as far as we all do all residential. Yeah.
And I do have one more thing. And Aaron's gonna have to help me with this. This is, you guys should have just received something from Judy. Susie. This came in the other day and I sent it on to Aaron to look at. It is a suggestion for the board for a rule change for home inspectors in, dealing with disciplinary matters. And because he is suggesting a rule change, we have to respond. Aaron, will you help me now?
Yes, I think when this first came to me, my initial thought, you can see my response there in the email, was that only the board can issue a rule or come up with a rule. However, because this is almost a public comment for a rule, even though the rule hasn't been suggested yet by any member of the board, I think it was important that the board at least see what this constituent wanted, and then possibly decide this is a rule that the board would entertain, this is something we're going forward, so that we can respond to him, and to respond to him, and let him know what the board's intention was. You can see his proposed rules are there on the second page there. He's listed 1 through 3. At that point, we can discuss. It's within other rules.
It's a complaint. He hasn't been active complaint before.
So,
Let's just vote.
Retesting
That's probably the inspection that he's offering more ways of getting.
Pretty much. It's proposing changes to rules, so we need to.
But the rule will be prospective. It
Right.
wouldn't go back and affect his complaints. Just be for future complaints.
Is there any categorization of negligence, like any kind of metric right now, or is it just like when someone has disciplinary action, what's the process behind that? Where's it documented? What's that look like for?
We go through the complaint, we look at the complaints to see if there are even violations of the SOP to start with. In a lot of cases, there's not. But if we do move forward with the complaint, then we look to see, have they had the same sort of complaint? I have the records for the last 5 years. Has there been a complaint filed that was the same? What do we do then if there were? Home inspectors are just like appraisers, we call them frequent flyers. So we look to see if they've been disciplined in the past, and then we ratchet it up a little bit more. It depends on, is it an issue that is the home inspector? A lot of times, the deficiency lies with report writing. If you get the response from the home inspector, you read it, and the home inspector knew exactly what he was doing, he just articulated it poorly. So we may give them a report writing class. We can give them, we have all sorts of options, but we generally, unless it's an ethical issue, now ethical issues are off the table. If this is something we can fix with education, we try to fix it with education. But we don't, this to me reads, in my opinion only, this reads as he's wanting us to grade the degree of negligence. And I don't think.
And notify the other industries that we're affiliated with. Putting an email sent to the realtors notifying them of anybody that's been discussed or being argued, correct? I felt like that's kind of the undercurrent of the whole email. Am I taking this wrong?
Like only. See,
Sounds like
okay,
that's the goal to me.
this person's in trouble for this, so we don't want to use them.
Well, we have a practice on that.
Y'all send
But
out
do
notifications?
we don't notify, it's published. Why, if it's published, that's one thing, but actively notifying all other agencies is another.
I don't really hate it. I just feel very like this. It's a wide range, and sometimes they can just be mad to be mad. Sometimes they're justified. There's moments that need to be dealt with. I'm all about accountability and ratcheting that up, but I'm just both sides of the strikes against trying to define what level of negligence. It could be a small moment of negligence that costs a lot of money, or it could be a large thing that was a minor thing. So there's just too much.
That's such a
Great, yeah, it's a word. I don't know if there's a value in rating that. Other than, I guess he's wanting to have some kind of a record to go to before he hire an inspector that says, oh, they were written up for gross negligence. Oh, they were minor, which to me is like, if you're the kind of person that's gonna go find that, you don't care if it's minor or gross, there's something that is. And so if we're taking measures to.
There's the old inspector numbers.
The statute that allows this board to discipline home inspectors does list gross negligence. Now, that's not defined in the statute, but there's no other mention as far as levels of negligence. Only gross negligence would have to be found before this board can suspend or sanction a license. So I think he called it minor negligence or something like that.
He wants.
There's nothing in the statute that corresponds with
So we
that.
almost already had.
I believe you do. Well, you have the gross negligence part. You don't have the.
Well, if it's not gross, then it's not.
That's right. And that's not one of the reasons listed that the board can discipline a home inspector.
I don't think we want to open the door to disciplining a home inspector because the switch didn't work. You know, that kind of, I'm not trying to be facetious, but genuinely, those minor things that, if there's that many complaints already, kind of the end. I think we have a lot more issues trying to, small, and I don't, again, we should all be very thorough with everything, but even like a representative number of windows, representative number of, they don't give it up to. They're just, I was told I need this, who else told to call, you know, do a
Tell me
good job
what's
for
wrong.
me.
So how do we respectfully respond?
I think that you could let him know whatever the board's decision is. If he has further questions, you know, he can certainly come and address the board if he'd like to do something like that, and the board allows that. Then if you draft a letter saying, you know, the board has considered your request for the following reasons. Act on this, and it could be things like statute has already spelled out. If gross negligence is allowed, it doesn't have a category of minor negligence. This board right now, unless it falls one of the other things, which is demonstration of trustworthiness, fraud, something like that, this board couldn't sanction a license for minor negligence, whatever the definition of that is. So as far as his first request, the board doesn't have the power to do what he's asking to do. So that one I think is fairly straightforward. The other ones, as far as informing the other boards, retested for recertification, or could articulate a reason why they feel that is necessary or not necessary, that can be included on this thing as well.
I think, our Attorney General representative effectively written that letter. We do a fine job in drafting.
So, but in relationship to two, there is a state statute now that says if we take someone, if a licensee goes to an administrative hearing and an order of notice of, no, a state, what is that? Findings of fact, conclusions of law and order is issued, it has to be posted on the website.
Yes.
So if someone has reached that level where the board has had an administrative hearing, that information is available.
We already have the policies in place that effectively do this.
Well, it doesn't send it out, that,
Right.
I mean, we'd be sending out
We're not
something.
proactively sending it to the state.
We're
But
not
it
pushing
is
it.
available
We're
and they
just
can check
making
it.
available.
Right, not advertising it.
Yeah,
It's there.
and I think that's adequate. So the
Well,
board has
I was
already
saying-
adequately addressed this.
Yeah, it's just.
And I think we need to just send him a letter stating such from the Attorney General's office and say, thank you.
Broadcast, hey, we just arrested this guy for,
The
Whatever.
opportunity to check it out.
but it's on their website.
Right,
Yeah, I
so,
think it's already been adequately addressed, and that's what I think we should correspond to that.
yeah, the only part is the testing. I don't know.
I think we address the retesting and the fact that we have continued that sharpens it, re-solidifies that we have to carry them to.
Okay, so if I draft a letter here, can I send it to you?
Thanks for your input.
We're already sending them to specific forces that address the situation, not just the law.
I think I've done some.
Board officer elections.
Sarah,
Sarah,
someone would like to.
okay.
Currently, our officer elections take place in January, our January. And I would like to bring forward a thought and a proposal that move that back to the November meeting, so that we meet in January, new year, new time, our officers are in place. Have to have a month or 2 months, because we don't meet every other month, to go through the process of getting that officer elected and tuned in, and, you know, everything's done, we're ready to go. We have a new year, and we have, all of our procedures in place.
Which you've been chair before,
Yes.
and like me, walk in, and they said, I would go into your chair, now you run the meeting. Oh, okay.
I just think it's the continuity, and it gives everybody an opportunity to move in, understanding what their responsibilities are, and at least have that preparation. So I'd like to make that motion.
do want to remind everybody that Ron, whoever is chair, according to the statutes and rules, they have to start for the year. So Ron's, the officers' chairs, their terms will end December 31st. There's something about a full year.
That is not actually.
But that works anyway.
We don't need to call
So
you.
you'll have you'll have a lame duck session, so you can do whatever you want.
That's right.
And we don't need to have to vote it on, so.
Next board meeting is November 14th, 10 a.m. Motion to adjourn. Scott. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
That's it.
And that's.
All right.
Recording stopped.
Bill, the report.
Over.
Are you a residential?
Yes, sir.